Okay, we've got our 3 main point outline along with the thesis statement. It's time to put together the bullet point outline. So in the bullet point outline, you're just basically going to fill in the template on just bullet points on what you're going to do with your speech. You're not filling out everything. You're not putting in according to and full sentences and all that. That's later. That's your formal outline. That's the final outline. Right now, we're just going to put down the roadmap with where we're going with our speech. Now, normally you would start with the body of your speech first, write that out in the bullet points, and then come back and do your intro and your conclusion. For me, it's going to be easier to show you if I start with the intro and then do the body and then come back to the conclusion. So I'm going to kind of go in that order. But most people, like when I write a speech, I'll write the body first, simply because the intro and conclusion are kind of the icing on the cake, or the difference between a track home and a custom home is the intro and conclusion, how you dress that up. We'll talk more about that later on. So first, let's start with that intro. Hopefully you've got the expository template in your hand right now and you're kind of looking at that. So when we look at that, the first thing we do in the intro is an attention getter. I'll put AG. The attention getter is going to be something that's going to capture the audience's attention. Now, we want to do something, there's a lot of different ways to do this, but I think the professional way to do that is to tell a story. So you're going to tell a story, and on the story, make it a story about a person if possible. Like, unless you're telling, if you're doing a speech on animal testing, do it about a dog or a cat or some type of animal. But other than that, do it on a person. So tell a story about a person. The reason why you want to do that is, number one, it develops a bond of goodwill. It shows that we want the best for our audience. Their best interests are at mind. Number two, it connects us to it because we connect to people. And number three, it gives you more credibility when you're talking about people, especially if you're talking about you. Like I have AFib, atrial fibrillation. My heart has arrhythmia. Every once in a while, it'll get out of rhythm. Every once in a while, it's like once or twice a year. It'll just kind of go crazy on me. It feels really weird. But me having it and me doing a speech on it says that I'm more of an expert than a person who hasn't had it. You'll be more likely to trust me on this ethos. So I'm building up my ethos or my credibility, okay? So on a bullet point outline, if I'm doing a speech on AFib, on my story, I'm just simply going to tell you a story about 9/11. Now, 9/11, everybody thinks of 9/11 as when the terrorists went into the World Trade Center in New York. Exactly 1 year after this happened, I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning with my heart just going crazy in my chest. And I went off to the emergency room and I found out I have AFib. So I would tell that story right there. So in my bullet point outline, I'm just going to say story about 9/11, and I know what that is, okay? Number two, listener relevance. Listener relevance is we're going to find a big number, and on that big number, we're going to show how it's going to be relevant to our audience. Again, remember step number two, kind of adapting this to the audience. When you adapt to the audience, what you want to do is you want to make it relevant. Show that it's something that's in their world. So you got timeliness, proximity, and personal impact. A big number can do that. So in terms of atrial fibrillation, I would look up a number, and there's statistics that's showing AFib numbers on the rise. So the numbers on the rise. Back in, it's like 95 was around 2 million people, and today it's upwards towards 5 million people have been diagnosed with this. So the numbers are rising. Whatever number it is that I would find, I would write my number in here for my bullet point outline. I don't have that number with me right now, but I would look that up and put that in there, okay? Number three is the thesis. We already know what the thesis is because we did that back when we did our thesis and 3 main points. So today we will learn about That was our thesis. And remember, we've already done our 3 main points. So whatever those three main points were, mine are what it is, cause, and treatment. Those were my three main points. Now later on, I can build all of this out. When I do my final outline, I'm going to build this out into a formal speech outline. But right now, just bullet points. That's good. Those are my four components to the introduction. Now I'm ready for my body. In the body, I'm going to do my first main point. Now, we want to make sure that when we do the main points in the body, they match exactly to what these three main points are. These are the key words we're going to use throughout the speech. So my first main point, I'm going to talk about what it is. That's going to be what I'm going to do. What I don't want to do is I don't want to change the words. So instead of the cause, what trips this off? What makes this happen? It all means the same thing, but don't change the word cause to something else. If you're using three main points of what it is, advantages, disadvantages, don't change it to be what it is, pros and cons, and intermix those words. It's going to confuse the audience. So use the exact same words right here all throughout your outline, okay? What it is. So that's my main point. My sub point is going to be maybe like defining what it is. So I'm going to define what it is. I think everybody should define what it is when you do what it is. And pretty much everybody's going to do what it is for their first main point. And then maybe under here, we can do something else like, let's say there's different types of AFib. I would talk about the different types. Now in AFib, there's not really different types. There's AFib and there's A-flutter. They're a little bit different, but I could probably talk about that under what it is, the differences, okay? So that'll be my bullet point outline of my first main point. Now, after your first main point, we're gonna do a transition. In the transition, I want everybody to write down the transitions the same way. Now that we discussed, blank, in this case it's going to be what it is, let's talk about blank. Our next thing, which will be cause, okay? So now that we've discussed what it is, let's talk about cause. And then on my main point, we'll talk about the cause. Okay? Now, when we go later on and we put in the formal outline, we're going to build this out even more. But for now, the bullet point, we can just say cause. On the final outline, it needs to be a complete full sentence. Okay? So the cause. I might have a main cause. And a secondary cause. So if I have a main cause, secondary cause, I've got my two subpoints. By the way, the number of subpoints that you can have in a speech is determined by how much time you have. 6 to 8 minutes means we speak at about 150 words per minute. So 6 minutes worth of talking is 900 words. 8 minutes is 1,200 words. So you have between 900 and 1,200 words to write your outline. Well, if you're doing a 6 to 8 minute speech, I can't talk forever about each one of these. I could get into those and probably speak over an hour on this topic alone. I don't have that much time. So limit yourself to 2 subpoints, 2 to 3 maximum for each main point, okay? So we have the cause, main cause, secondary cause. Then I do another transition. Again, that transition is going to be, now that we discussed the cause, let's talk about treatment. Okay, so we stay with the same words. And then down here I go treatment. Now in the case of AFib, there are 3 different types of treatment. We have meds. We have what's called cardioversion. That's when they put the paddles on you and shock you. I've done that about 6, 7 times. It's fun. And C, it's called ablation. I've had this as well. They go in your veins and they burn the circuits in your heart to try to prevent this from happening. So those would be the things that I'd be talking about in my speech. What it is, the cause, treatment. Okay? Then after I get done with my body, again, this is the bullet point, not the final outline. Once I get done with the body, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back, and the conclusion is actually almost a reversal of your introduction. So in the conclusion, the first thing you do in your conclusion, you just change it to past tense. You do the thesis. So I'm gonna put over here, let's make a little, we'll make a line right in here. Make this line. So the first thing you're gonna do is going to be, for the conclusion, is going to be the thesis. Today we've talked about AFib, or today we've learned about AFib. That'll be the first thing you do. Then you go to your 3 main points. That'll be the second thing you do. We talked about what it is, we talked about the cause, and we talked about treatments. Then we go to the big number. Whoops, let me lower that down a little bit. I don't want to confuse anybody. We go back to the big number. So remember, over 5 million people today have AFib, and it's on the rise. This could be you or somebody you love. If not now, it's going to happen in the near future. And then the last thing you do is what we call, it's like a tie back. You go back to the original story. So I'd say something like, now I remember on that day, 9/11, I woke up and it was my 9/11. But over time, having known or gaining the knowledge of all this and looking back at it, AFib is something you can live with. It's really not a 9/11. It's more like an 11/9. It's serious, but it's something you can manage if you have the right information, which you do now. So it'd be something like that. Just tie back to your story, okay? So that's what we do. Intro, body, conclusion. Write out your bullet point outline. Get that assignment done. Get it turned in so I can look it over. I'm going to give you feedback on it, so make sure you read my feedback before you move on to doing the third step, which is the final outline.